Are you recording? Away you go.
G'day kids. My name's Warren. Some might know me as Mr. J. We're going to build some billy carts. You fellas have nothing to do on holidays, during the holidays, and this might be a way that you can fill in your time. But before we start to build the billy carts, we've got to learn a little bit about tools. The tools that you're going to use. You don't need too many tools. You'll need a hammer and a saw and a drill and a couple of other bits and pieces which we'll show you along the way. Today we're going to talk about hammers and how to drive a nail. There are many different sorts of hammers, of course, as you understand. There are big hammers and small hammers. Let's have a look at a few. The biggest of all that we might use is a big steel hammer like this. It's a small sledgehammer. We don't use those except for driving the biggest of nails. There are other hammers that we use, wooden hammers or mauls or mallets that we might call them. They're used for knocking wood into place and getting it to fit right. Different sorts. There are of course rubber mallets that we don't use at all in carpentry work. The usual sorts of hammers that we use though are the claw hammer. You've all seen one of those. Okay, of different sorts and different sizes, two smaller sizes and a little baby one here. A very, very small hammer. There are other sorts, of course, ones with a round end on them, which are basically used in metal work, again for banging metal into place. The hammers that we're going to use today is this one here. The hammer that we use depends entirely on what sort of nail that we're going to drive. The most common nails, of course, are steel nails. You've all seen these boxes of steel nails down at the shop. But we have many different sorts of nails. Big nails, these are made out of copper and they're used in boat building. We have galvanised nails. They're about 5 centimetres long and they're covered with galvanising so they don't rust. We have smaller, bright, silver steel nails as well. They too are about 50 centimetres long. Of course, the smallest nails that we use are little tiny fellows and they can be down to 1 centimetre long. That's about that big and they're very small, very hard to get hold of. Okay, as I said, it depends on the sort of nail you're going to drive as to what sort of hammer that you need to use. Of course, it's absolutely pointless in using a hammer like that to drive a little tiny small nail like so, don't you think? What would happen if you do that? We'll show you shortly. A little nail like that, about 3 centimetres long, it is only necessary to use a smaller hammer, like so. See the size of the hammer compared to my hand? It's not very big, is it? But of course, we might also decide to use this little tiny hammer here. See the size of it? Why do you think we'd use that little hammer? Because it's very light and as we drive the nail it won't bend the nail. Okay, let's have a go at driving some nails. For today's exercise we've got some timber here. This is soft timber. Okay, different pieces. It's always easier, of course, to drive a nail into softer wood, and the bigger piece of timber, the easier it is to drive as well. Righto, what sort of nail do you think you might use to hold this piece to that piece? Any ideas? I would go for something about 60 centimetres long, 60 millimetres long, that's 6 centimetres. It needs to be just not as thick, as long as the two thicknesses of timber. Or in other words, for most instances, you don't want that nail to drive right through the first piece, right through the second piece. Okay? So we'll use that 60mm nail. Of course, if you are going to fasten a light piece of timber, I'll just get one. If you are going to use a very light piece of timber and nail it to one of these heavier pieces, you wouldn't need such a big nail. And something about 2 centimetres long would be absolutely fine. Why do you think that is? The bigger nail, if I was to use something like that big fellow there, about 60 to 70 millimetres long, it might split that little fine piece of wood as we drive it through. So we'd use a tiny little nail like that. In this case, some people might use a very small hammer, but I like to use a slightly bigger hammer. The nail is held in your 2 fingers like so, of your left hand, or if you're a right-hander. If you're a left-hander, it's held in the 2 fingers of your right hand. You plant the nail into your piece of timber like so, hold it with your fingers, a slight tap, which is called planting the nail. Notice how I'm holding my hammer, right at the end of the handle, not up there. Why do you think I hold it at the end of the handle like that? So that I can get maximum weight and force onto my nail. Okay, we're ready to go. We've planted the nail, we're holding our timber together like so, and we're bang, 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 and it's in. And that's how easy it is. But of course, if we've got a bigger piece of timber, a heavier piece of timber, it's a slightly different process. We choose our nail. It's a good idea to put a little bit of soap or something a little bit slippery onto the nail as you drive it. You look at the head of your hammer. Is the head of your hammer nice and clean? If it's not, quite simply rub it on the concrete and roughen up the face of your hammer a little. I use a little piece of sandpaper. And that makes the face of your hammer very coarse. Righto. Again, plant the nail, hold your pieces of timber together. Remember, hold on to your hammer like so, which is the proper way. And that's it, your nail is driven. Let's drive 2 nails. Rest. And that's it. And that's all there is to driving a nail. Of course, somebody's going to say, but I hit my fingers. If you plant your nail first, get your fingers out of the road, watch the nail, not the hammer, look at the head of the nail, not at the head of the hammer, and you will drive that very well. Okay? And that's driving a nail. Let's drive a little tiny one with a little tiny hammer. Again, just rub it in your hair like that, or on the back of your neck, and that puts a little bit of sweat and a little bit of oil on your nail. Little tiny hammer. Different sort of process this time. We tap the nail in instead of slamming it hard. Okay, say I was going to drive one of these big copper nails into a piece of timber. It's pretty obvious that copper is very, very soft, and a copper nail will bend. I can nearly bend that in my fingers. So if I was to drive a great big nail through that piece of timber, it would surely bend. So I must drill a hole to start with. That hole needs to be smaller than the overall diameter of the nail. Okay, again, drill your hole, rub a little bit of grease or a little bit of soap on your nail, Choose the hammer that you're going to use. This time I would use quite a large hammer. Let's use a heavier claw hammer. Same process, into the hole that you've already drilled, bent it. What do we do with a bent nail? How do we get it out? This one is very difficult to get out. Why do you think I bent it? Because the face of my hammer is very slippery and it's got bits of glue and paint and all sorts of stuff all over it. So when I've hit the head of the nail, it's skidded off the nail, hit it crooked and bent the nail. I'll go back to a smaller hammer, which is the one I usually use, very familiar with. Okay, bit of oil, drive your nail, it's bent. How do I get it out? Well, notice this hammer has a claw on the back, and that claw is used for pulling out nails. Quite literally, it sits on the nail like so. I would use a block of timber under this one. I'll use this block here if it's big enough. It's a bit too big. So I'll just pull it out ordinarily. Now, did you see how I put my hand over the back of the nail as I pulled the nail out? Why do you think I did that? Because if I didn't, when I pull the nail out like so, it may very well flick up and flick away and go into my eye. So, if you're going to pull a nail out of the hole, get hold of your nail, put your hand over the hammer, and it's out. Okay, let's just demonstrate that once more. Drive a nail, little bit of lubrication, into the timber. Number one. Number two. Oh, I bent that one. So here we go once again. Claw hammer, hand over the nail like so, and pull it out. Okay, what do you think about that? Next week, we'll go on to using hand saws and how to cut a piece of wood. See ya!